Hello, my name is Dr. Olesia Zhytkova. I am PhD postdoctoral researcher in the Corruption, Gender and Sustainable Development Project, DCU Business School. The project is funded by Irish Research Council. In this lecture, entitled Corruption and the Environment, following topics will be revealed. The overall impact of corruption on nature and environmental protection. Corruption and the renewable resources sector. Life below water, life on land. You will learn about corruption's impact on forestry, fishing and wildlife. Corruption, the non-renewable resources sector, clean energy and climate action. And conclusions. The overall impact of corruption on nature and environmental protection. The global ecological system and the environment of a particular country or region is a complex system with many interconnections and mutual influences. Human activity has a significant impact on the environment, and corruption plays an impressive role in this. Researchers believe corruption takes multiple forms, exists at multiple scales, may have both direct and indirect effects on the environment. The impact of corruption on the environment is not always straightforward, but it is definitely significant. Environmental degradation is commonly viewed as a problem of collective action and abuse. People have different needs for the use of the environment, and meeting these needs depletes the ecological system. Regulation of natural resources use by governments, responsible authorities and civil society helps to reduce humans' negative impact on the environment. However, it is corruption that often allows individuals to violate environmental regulations, which leads to environmental degradation and threatens sustainable development. This scale of corrupt practices has an equally negative effect on the use and conservation of natural resources. Corruption at the level of governing agencies threatens competent environmental management policies, while corruption at the local level threatens the quality of implementation of such practices. Corruption also indirectly affects the effectiveness of environmental programs, as it reduces the part of material resources that could be used for their implementation. The environmental outcomes of corruption are sometimes unpredictable. On the one hand, poor regulation and low public accountability lead to inappropriate use of natural resources. Countries with poor governance and high levels of corruption often suffer from some of the gravest environmental risks. On the other hand, corruption, along with a slowdown in economic development, cuts down the use of natural resources and, respectively, the negative impact of human on the environment. Of course, corruption should not be used to preserve the environment. Corruption and the renewable resources sector. Life below water, life on land. Transparency International working paper entitled Corruption and Renewable Natural Resources gives remarkable examples of corruption's destructive effect on the life below water, life on land, by analyzing forestry, fisheries, and wildlife. Forests are an important element of the ecological system and its stability, as they preserve biodiversity, regulate climate conditions, and carbon dioxide emissions. Corruption is often a part of a poor forest governance and contributes to the destruction of forests. Corruption can occur at all stages of forest resource use. Bribes and abuse of power may be used either to facilitate logging without appropriate permits or to gain access to forests through questionable land concessions. Bribes, kickbacks may occur to process the trade the logs once they have been harvested, so-called timber laundering. And when violations are found, corruption schemes in law enforcement and judicial system can be used to avoid responsibility for the crime. For example, Central Africa has the second largest rainforest in the world, with its natural resources including minerals, oil and wood. At the same time, region's countries have no significant success in fighting corruption. The forestry sector is a vital source of income and employment, contributing 13% of the country's export revenue. According to the Enact Africa paper of 2023, illegal logging, firewood trafficking for charcoal, and timber trafficking contribute to a deforestation rate of about 1% of total rainforest coverage every year. These crimes are usually closely connected to bribes, kickbacks, money laundering, embezzlement, abuse of power, and so on. Fisheries in the modern world face several serious threats. First, fishing has become a highly profitable business and overfishing is observed around the world. Second, the practice of non-compliance with fisheries management regimes is often accompanied by corruption. It provides illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing when inspectors and quota observers are bribed to ignore violations. For example, Russian-controlled part of the Barents Sea suffers from a lack of quality management. Illegal trade in the region back in 1990s, early 2000s was caused by corruption offenses among the Russian observers assigned to accompany foreign fishing vessels. World Wildlife Fund issued a study entitled Illegal Russian Crab, an Investigation of Trade Flow. The research has revealed that populations of crab in the Russian Far East are at risk of collapse due to overharvest from illegal fishing. It was indicated that illegal crabbing is carried out by laundering, including misdeclaring quantities, mislabeling products, creating false documentation, and bribery. The trade in wild animals and plants is another large industry whose proper regulation is the key to the preservation of flora and fauna on the planet. Despite regulation, there are international and local black markets of animals and plants, and often rare species of them. In 2023, the Wildlife Justice Commission published a report entitled Dirty Money: The Role of Corruption in Enabling Wildlife Crime. The document clearly shows that corruption can be a major problem along the entire wildlife trade chain. In particular, corruption can be present in poaching and supply, bribery for permission, stock thefts, in smuggling and transportation, bribery of customs and government officials, fraudulent export documentation, in distribution and trade, bribery for law enforcement protection, fraudulent import documentation, and in the criminal justice chain when the crime is detected, bribery to obstruct investigation and trials or to be released from custody. Many cases prove the significant harmfulness of corruption to wildlife. For example, in November 2022, two officials of the Cambodian Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, Omaliskeo and Masfal Kruai, were among 8 people charged by the United States Department of Justice for their role in facilitating the export of wild-caught long-tailed macaques from Cambodia to the United States. Long-tailed macaques are protected. Therefore, a person has to have special permit for the animal to enter US. The indictment alleged the Cambodian officials allowed a collection quota of up to 3,000 unofficial macaques since at least December 2017, accepted bribes, and supplied falsified permits to accompany the shipments. A few years later, the court's decision had an unexpected result, but significant evidence of the defense's guilt was presented at the hearings. Corruption, the non-renewable resources sector, clean energy and climate action. Non-renewable resources sector has been already damaged by the industry using it, but corruption adds to this destruction. Some of these consequences are more serious than they seem at first glance. The mining industry itself causes environmental damage. Mining operations produce smelter gases, oxidation products including acids, air pollutants and sludge as byproducts. Both poor environmental protection and corrupt government officials often allow companies operating in this industry to regulate themselves, offending laws, in exchange for kickbacks or bribes. As a result, most of hazardous pollutants are illegally discharged. For example, in 2016 in Liberia, top government officials were indicted on charges of bribery for conspiring to amend key laws to enable a London-listed company, Sable Mining, to get rights to one of the world's richest iron ore deposits, the Ouedraogo mountain range. According to leaked documents, over $950,000 was used to pay off government officials and their relatives. Corruption in the mining industry also slows the energy transition and moves us further away from sustainable energy. Renewable energy technologies need minerals and metals. Many of these minerals are located in countries that have high levels of corruption, weak governance, and governments that do not or cannot protect human rights. Hence, corruption can be a threat to the whole planet and to a just and people-centered energy transition. And conclusions. Corruption affects all areas of public life. When corrupt practices involve the environment, they not only decrease the quality of our lives today, but also threaten our future well-being and the global ecological system. In this case, it is important to understand that the fight against corruption is a shared responsibility, both countries with low and high levels of corruption. Developing transparency, media freedom, institutional reforms where necessary, increasing the real influence of civil society on decision-making, promoting anti-corruption practices are key tasks in reducing the impact of corruption on the environment.